What is up, everybody? Welcome into this happy hour edition of the Pack a Day podcast. I am your host, Andy Herman. It has been far too long since we've done a happy hour. So happy to be joining you guys today and happy you guys are joining me. I'm going to say the same thing that I talked about in our members only podcast these past couple weeks. For those of you who are maybe hoping to go over specific player draft questions, I will just be totally transparent with you. I'm not there quite yet. Usually my general order of operations is season ends and then I do season recap and kind of go through all the grades and do everything like that. Of course, we had the Jeff Hafley stuff with a new defensive coordinator, so dug into that a ton and then wanted to go over the additional coaching staff. Recently, I've been really diving into free agency. And then usually once the combine is done, I go rather aggressively into the draft stuff. So I promise you, we will get to very specific draft questions. This is also why hopefully you guys are enjoying the daily draft with Ross Uglum. Wanted to add something in that gave you guys a ton of draft content between really the end of the season up until probably right after the draft. And as you guys know, who have followed me in the past, I dig into it very deep as well. I will get there and excited this year as well, not working full time for the first time ever during the draft, that I should be able to dive into it better than ever and deeper than ever. So I'm excited about that. So that will come, I promise. If you guys have general draft questions, that's great. Happy to answer those. But if you're looking for a breakdown of specific players, just total transparency, I am not there quite yet and would rather be honest with you guys than try to, make up stuff for where players are at from an evaluation standpoint. All right. First of all, Paul Merrifield, thank you so much for becoming a new Pack a Day podcast YouTube member. If you guys have not checked those out yet, make sure to do so. We do a weekly members only chat, which is a ton of fun. You get additional content. You get content first. Usually there's, logged episodes lined up that you get the, again, access to well before they're released. So definitely worth the price of admission. So make sure to check those out. But Paul, thanks so much for joining. Ron, great question to start things off here. Do we really care which position Goody signs in free agency? He just needs to take some pressure off of the draft. I understand your overarching thought process here, Ron. I will say, yes, I do care in the effect that, let's just put it this way, right? I know this is the very extreme side of the opposite, but if they went out and spent a huge contract on a backup quarterback, I don't know, that's probably not the best use of resources. I would even go as far to say, and I kind of discussed this in the video going over T. Higgins, if you go and aggressively sign a big time wide receiver, I don't think that's necessarily the best use of your funds right now. And I think there's other positions that we could go over there too. Tight end would be an interesting one. I think there are a variety of positions they could address. If they really signed a defensive lineman, a edge rusher, an off-ball linebacker, a corner, specifically a slot corner, a safety, a kicker, a running back, an offensive lineman, that's fine. Like, I have no issue with that. The real process of draft and free agency is to acquire talented players. Like, go out and get really good football players. And what's that going to do? It's going to ultimately help your team. And if it's at any of those positions, I'm kind of cool with it. I don't think they have to necessarily address a specific position. Now, they have to address safety in some regard. You certainly cannot go into the season with the safety room as Zane Anderson and Benny Sapp the third, or is it junior? I forget. Benny Sapp the third, I think, and then Anthony Johnson Jr. That you can't go into the season with that. So safety needs to be addressed. I think the vast majority of us would like to see that in a very similar Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage situation where they double dip. I think they could even triple dip or even quadruple dip at safety in free agency in the draft. But I will say this, and I've said it before, I will give Goody the benefit of the doubt. A lot of people last year thought, hey, Green Bay is going to have to go out and get veteran wide receivers. And if he doesn't, it's going to be a major issue. And he's like, nah, I'm good. We've got Bo Melton on the practice squad. We've got Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson already. And I'm just going to go out and get Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Malik Heath, Grant Dubose in the draft. And we're going to be totally great. And he was right. And now, granted, he didn't have like a ton of options. He didn't have money to spend, but he could have spent a minimum contract on some veteran guys like a Sammy Watkins or a Devin Funchess like he's done in the past. And he's like, nah, I'm good. I've seen that route. I would rather go with young players and have them develop. Tight end, you move on from Mercedes Lewis and Robert Tonyan. And a lot of people are like, man, you're going to need veterans to replace those guys if you want this offense to run. And he's like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to go with Luke Musgrave in the second round, Tucker Kraft in the third round. I'm going to claim an undrafted free agent wide receiver off of waivers from the Minnesota, or tight end off of waivers from the Minnesota Vikings in Ben Sims, and he's going to play and he's going to be good. And he's like, I'll just fill it that way. And it worked. Now, at defensive back specifically, Goody hasn't always had the same exact track record in the defensive backfield when it comes to drafting. And I think that's a huge reason why a lot of us would like to see that buoyed with some free agent signings as well. The good news is they have the money to spend. The good news is I would be pretty shocked if they don't address safety in some capacity in free agency. And I think he knows it. I think they're going to have to. And now maybe that's just bringing guys back. Maybe that is a more cost-effective veteran free agent signing. Those are all within the realm of possibility, but don't expect this just to be status quo. Expect him to be aggressive, trying to fill that safety spot. But to your point, your ultimate goal in free agency and leading up to the draft is to make it so when you get to the draft, you don't have needs you have to fill. You don't want to go into the draft being like, all right, well, if we don't get 3 safeties, we are screwed. Because you don't know how the draft is going to fall, and you don't want to specifically reach for a safety, specifically when this isn't particularly a great safety class. And that goes for every position. Like, you don't want to go into the draft being like, we have to get this one specific thing. So you want to try to fill out. And I've always said it, like, the more that you can get to the draft with a roster that's already ready to play on Sundays and ready to open up the season, the better off you're going to be. So I would love to see him have a full 22-man starting lineup along with special teams, kicker, punter, long snapper, and everything that you need to compete already ready to go come draft time. And what that allows you to do then, as much as possible, is legitimately draft best player available. And that's always going to be the better way to go, because you don't want to necessarily reach for a position that you need rather than just taking the best player on the board. And that's when you get into trouble. That's when you get into mistakes. And that's why you want to be able to fill out that roster as much as possible before heading into the draft. But I do understand your overall thought process here, Ron, but I do think it does matter in some capacity. All right, Kevin, what's your ideal and realistic scenarios for both safety positions? My ideal scenario would be signing McKinney and using a top 100 draft pick on a safety, or do a combo signing of Fuller and Blackman. Kevin, I wholeheartedly agree. And we kind of discussed it just a little bit, that like, I think they can double or triple dip at that position. I would love for them to go into training camp with Anthony Johnson Jr. as like the 5th guy, and Zane Anderson and Benny Sapp fighting for like a special team spot. And they really fill out the back end of that, or the front end of that safety room, I should say. But I like all the guys that you mentioned. McKinney would be the dream signing. We talked about in length on today's podcast. If you guys have not checked out today's breakdown of the safety position, huge deep dive into all the free agent options. And I think Kevin probably watched as Fuller and Blackman, 2 of my favorite, sort of under the radar options for Green Bay. But they also need to attack that position aggressively via the draft, at least not over aggressive when it's not a position of strength necessarily in the draft, but you got to get some young talent starting to accumulate on this roster as well at the safety position. So Kevin, you and I are in lockstep on that one. All right, Richard, do I find it ironic that mock drafts always draft for team needs, while post-draft mock drafts always draft for best player available with hindsight? Not necessarily. Here's how I view mock drafts. And I think it's always important to go into mock drafts with the right mindset. I view mock drafts not as somebody necessarily trying to predict 32 picks correctly in the first round, or certainly not a 7-round mock draft. The way that I always view mock drafts is, all right, I kind of want, like, I love viewing all the different ones just to see, all right, who is expected to be available at 25. I don't even care in that mock draft who they picked for Green Bay. Doesn't matter to me at all. I like going through all the different ones to be like, okay, in this scenario, here are the players who are available at pick 25. And then I go to a different mock and it's like, all right, here are the different players who are available at 25. So I don't even necessarily look at who went earlier. I don't necessarily care who they have selected for Green Bay. I just care of like, all right, here are the, usually it's a first round mock draft, right? So we can see picks 25 through 32. And I just usually take a cursory glance at like, all right, who's available 25 through 32, and who do I like kind of in that range of who could potentially be available. That's kind of how I more use it. And that's why I just like to see different versions of mock drafts, just to see, all right, who do people think are going to be available at pick 25? That's kind of how I more like to do it. And then like, who's available like 3 steps ahead, because if Green Bay wants to move up 3 spots, like, all right, who could they get if they could get up to pick 22 and those sort of things. I don't view it as predictive. I don't view it as anything really other than entertainment. And the vast, vast, vast majority of people do not have a pulse on like what teams actually do in the draft. Like Green Bay has a very specific formula, usually in the first round, for how they attack the draft. And not a lot of people who are doing mock drafts even care about that. So I don't view it for that. I view it to see, all right, who do they think could potentially be available and kind of go about it that way. All right, Moonman, signing a quarterback for unproportional amount of money leads to a team having to sacrifice very good players in the future. Listen, there's no perfect way to build a team. The best way to build a team is by having a great quarterback. And I don't necessarily care as to how you have to go about keeping that quarterback or paying that quarterback. In the ideal world, yes, the cheat code is that you have a super cheap quarterback on a cheap deal and you can build out the entire roster around that player. It sounds great in theory. Philly did it really, really well 2 seasons ago, and they still ran into Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes just won. Sounds really, really great in theory for the San Francisco 49ers, who have Brock Purdy at quarterback on the cheapest deal basically imaginable for a quarterback and can fill out that entire roster with a ton of talent. Guess what? Sorry about that, guys. Not sure if I disconnected there for a second, but so I know Patrick Mahomes is not, took a little bit of a discounted deal to stay on the team. That's fine. Or not to stay on the team, but like, to kind of make that team competitive. And like, I don't know what they were thinking with that deal, honestly, with Mahomes, but still, he makes a huge chunk of money and that team is doing just fine for how they want to compete in the NFL. So I get the thought process there, but the goal is to have a great quarterback. That's your best opportunity to win. And even though that, yes, it is a cheat code to have a cheap quarterback and put a great team around him, it doesn't always work out in a perfect way. And you could do it like the Bears did it with Mitch Trubisky, right? Young quarterback, they go out, they get Khalil Mack, and they fill out that roster with a ton of talent, Allen Robinson, etc. And they got the quarterback wrong. So all of that other stuff that they didn't matter at all because they got the quarterback wrong. Find a good quarterback, do whatever you can to keep them. And there are a multitude of ways to build your roster out. And as we saw with Green Bay this year, if you draft well, you have a whole receiving core of Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Bo Melton, Malik Heath that are making under, I think, $9 million combined this season. That's a great way to make up for a big quarterback contract. We saw Green Bay compete at a very high level last year with a massive Aaron Rodgers cap hit, and he wasn't even on the team. There are a variety of ways to go about doing it. You can be super competitive, and ultimately you want a great quarterback. The Chiefs have one, and they're going to win a lot because of it. And, even if you do get that perfect formula right, it does not guarantee you of anything. Phoenix Fire Kid, hello to you as well. MU Wade 3 reports are Dillon is unlikely to be resigned. Expected, I guess. Let's talk about that Tom Silverstein article that just came out a little bit before. First of all, go out and check that out if you haven't read it yet, because it's worth your time. 2 really big takeaways from that article. The first is that he reports the Packers are not expected to bring back AJ Dillon. For those of you who have been listening to me over the course of really a while now, but certainly this past week, I did a couple different episodes. Tyler Herrick made a short out of one of those episodes. I really like AJ Dillon, the person. I really like, that he's adopted mayor of Door County. I love all those things about him, the Quadzilla stuff. There is certainly still a role for him in the NFL that's unquestionable. The difference between having a playmaker at running back and what AJ Dillon was, to me, was massive. And it was no more apparent than what we saw when Aaron Jones came back from the injury last year and took that spot back from AJ Dillon, and the offense just opened up exponentially. This, to me, is the right move for Green Bay. It's a harsh business. It sucks. I wish he was staying in Green Bay in some capacity. I get, and I know a lot of people wish that as well. To me, from a football standpoint, from a roster building standpoint, it is time to go in a different direction. You need playmakers at your playmaker positions. I think this is something that really, after moving on from Aaron Rodgers, they've gone in a very different direction with filling out this roster. You look at when Aaron was on the team that last year in Green Bay, there was just a complete lack of run after the catch, break tackle, and playmaking ability. Jones was like the only one. Watson was up and coming at the end of it, but you had way too many Alan Lazards, Randall Cobbs at the end of his career, Sammy Watkins, Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, AJ Dillons, Josiah DeGuaras, all of those guys who just had almost no run after the catch ability, run after, breakthrough tackle ability, yards after contact ability. And it was up to like this complete, like 80, 85 yard drives that were going to take 5, 10, 15 plays because you couldn't get those big explosive plays. Green Bay seems to be going in a very opposite direction with wanting big time playmakers at all their playmaker positions. And we saw how hard that was to stop for opposing teams. And those wide receivers, tight ends are only going to get better. And now it's time to get younger and more dynamic at that running back position as well. To me, that's the right decision. The other big piece in that article was Tom Silverstein reported that they're working on a contract renegotiation with Aaron Jones, which is expected. They want to get that cap number down. But the big takeaway there was that if they cannot come to an agreement, they likely would release Aaron Jones and then still want him back, but basically let him try to set the market elsewhere and try to make it that their offer is the best offer, but wouldn't be able to guarantee it, which means you could potentially lose out on Aaron Jones. My belief personally, I have no reporting on this. Trust Tom's reporting on this. My belief is that this is probably a negotiation tactic. My belief is that Aaron Jones will find a way to be back in Green Bay, and the Packers will find a way to bring Aaron Jones back in Green Bay in 2024. I would be pretty shocked if Aaron Jones is not on the roster this year. And this is just sort of those tough negotiating periods where the Packers would love to get his number down. Drew Rosenhaus, known really tough agent to work with from a getting contracts down standpoint, is going to do everything he can to get the most money out of the Packers possible. We know Aaron loves it in Green Bay. We know the Packers love having Aaron on the roster. I think ultimately that will prevail, that both of these sides want to get something done. They will get something done, and it won't have to come to a release. And even if it does come to a release, I think cooler heads could prevail and they could still work out something that he comes back in Green Bay after he explores the market a little bit. But I don't have too much concern over it, but that is, and I talked about that literally this week. Who did we talk about? We talked about Preston Smith and his renegotiation. I said, the adage is if you go to a player and say, hey, we want to renegotiate your deal and bring it down, and the agent and the player says no, you have to be able to say, all right, then we're releasing you. Because otherwise, if you go to every single player and say, hey, we want to bring your deal down, and he and the agent say, no, we're not going to do that, and the Packers just say, haha, okay, we were just kidding, all good, pretend that didn't happen, then word gets out. And every agent from there on out is just turns down the Packers for any renegotiation or pay cut inquiry that they get, because they know the Packers will just back down from it and aren't actually going to release the player. So you have to have the ability to back it up and say, hey, if you don't take this pay cut, we're cutting you. And sometimes the player might say, fine, you want to cut me, cut me. And other times they might say, whoa, I'd like to stay in Green Bay. Let's work something out here. I think Jones wants to stay in Green Bay. I think they want to keep Jones in Green Bay. I think they're going to work something out. But this is a pretty important reporting from Tom Silverstein. And again, the other big thing here in that article is the report is, per Tom, they are not looking to retain A.J. Dillon for this upcoming season. So a couple big pieces of news there. Garrison, happy Friday to you, my friend. Jordan Love, the real MVP, say it with me. Hey, I'm intrigued to see this entire next season play out, because we went in a very short period of time of, we have no idea what the Packers have at quarterback and if Love can be the answer. And hey, we have no expectations for this Packers team. We think they can kind of be competitive, but let's just wait and see. We had almost no expectations going into 2023 to now we're literally talking about Super Bowl and MVP. That is a very short period of time to go from, I don't know, everything's up in the air, to now everything has to be MVP and Super Bowl. Expectations have changed in a hurry, and I'm going to be really, really interested to see how the team and the players respond to that this year. Austin, we just talked about it. I'm not necessarily willing to do a Taki chip challenge if I'm wrong on this one, but I don't know. We'll think of something. I'm going to go on the record. I'm going to say Aaron Jones will be back in Green Bay in 2024. What can I put on this? I don't know. I'll think of something. But he'll be back. I wholeheartedly believe that. And we'll see what ends up happening. But I wouldn't panic too much yet. This is firm negotiating period between agents and players. So don't get too out of sorts with stuff. All right, we got an extra $4.5 million in cap space that is expected because of carryover money, I guess, per Ingles. Have you seen this? Can you explain? I did see Ken talk about that. This is not carryover cap that was already accounted for. This is usually incentives and bonuses and per game roster bonuses that were not collected in 2023. These can go two ways. So when you sign a player to an incentive deal or when you sign them to a per game roster bonus or things like that, roster bonuses can be likely to be earned or unlikely to be earned. If they are likely to be earned, they count against the salary cap for this upcoming season. And then if they don't actually earn them, you get a credit back in the following year. If they are unlikely to be earned, then they do not count against your salary cap this season. But if they are earned, then they are debited on next year's salary cap. So they can kind of work both ways. And I know Ken had put together his projections and thought that Green Bay was going to get, I think, somewhere around like $1.5 million in money based off of, non-used roster bonuses and players who maybe didn't go to their like they had specific like workout bonuses and things like that. So maybe they didn't attend their workouts. I think he was expecting like 1.5 million and it just came back, I think, being like 4.5 million extra. So I think it was maybe like 6 million, whatever it was. I know Ken has it out on his Twitter profile, but it ended up being more. So this is just more money that is coming Green Bay's way, which is a great thing to see. And this, unlike the salary cap, which went up for everyone, this is money that was specifically credited back just to Green Bay, which gives them a little bit more of an advantage over some of the other teams who maybe did not get that money back. If Darnell Savage is gone, I think we have to get a veteran safety. I think Darnell Savage will be gone, and I think they will get a veteran safety. So I am with you, and I expect both of those things to happen. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Savage is gone. I do think he probably has more value on the open market than what Green Bay would be willing to bring him back for. That would be my guess. No combine crush yet, Hunter. As I mentioned, I will start digging very aggressively into draft starting next week. Love the free agent safety video. When you look across the league, who would you say are the ideal safeties in the system, not just those that are available? Oh, man. I do think the one that's available that's a perfect fit is Xavier McKinney. I'd have to look. Let's see if I can pull this up quick. 1 second here. Just kind of jog my memory here. Jesse Bates would be a perfect fit in any system. Javon Holland, I think, would fit in a variety of different ways. I think you could be that single high, but I think you would have a great deal of versatility. We talked about Xavier McKinney. Kyle Hamilton, I think, could play either the box or that single high safety, although I think he'd be really good as that box safety. Who else would be really good? I think Malik Hooker for the Cowboys could easily play that single high safety. I think he'd be a good fit. Marcus Williams in Baltimore could play that single high safety. Let's see. Hufanga for the 49ers would be an amazing box safety. Harrison Smith, I still think, could play a variety of different things. He's just such a veteran and can do a little bit of everything. Justin Simmons could be a great free safety or post safety still in the league, in my opinion. Those would be probably some of the names that come to mind overall in the NFL, but Xavier McKinney would fit extremely well. Would I want a Rasul reunion? Actually did a bonus episode lately for members. I think it was just last week. Maybe it was the week before that on Rasul Douglas and whether or not, kind of the Packers have any regret in sort of revisiting that trade. I think he would be a perfect fit in Jeff Hafley's defense. If he does get released, I would be totally open to it. I don't expect it to happen. My guess is Buffalo and Rasul come to some sort of agreement on a renegotiated contract. Even if he does get released, I don't expect him to be back in Green Bay, but certainly would not hate it. And I do think he would fit perfectly in this Jeff Hafley system. With the article Tom posted, do you think there's a real shot we cut Jones? Obviously, we went over that. McKinney and DeJean duo would be a godsend. Sign me the heck up. Who would you say across the NFL plays the single high safety the best? Same with box safety. We just went through some of those skis, so I know some of you guys are on the same page here. No draft crush yet. Adam will absolutely get there. Linebackers in free agency. I have a very similar video planned that we did for the safety video today. I'm going to do a same one for linebackers coming up. So keep an eye out for that. That should be out mid to late next week would be my guess, maybe sooner dependent upon when I get to it. Also want to do one for slot corners and also want to do one for potential running backs as well. I have not evaluated Trayvon Henderson as of yet. As I mentioned at the onset, for those of you who are just joining, for those of you who have specific draft questions, I'm getting there. I promise. I like to do all my own draft work and not read anyone else's stuff. So it's my own opinions. That stuff takes time. I promise I'll get there. And as you guys know, I love to deep dive into the draft every single year. Just usually takes me a little bit longer, but we'll get there. I promise. Ideal draft party lineup. Looking forward to your coverage. It's a good question, Ski. I haven't really put too much thought into it yet, but we'll get there as well. And yeah, I'll be live streaming a lot of stuff. Probably do live watch party for day 1 of the draft, probably day 2 of the draft, and then I don't know what we'll figure it out. There's a balancing act here because I want to be able to get a video out as soon as players are drafted. So usually Packers make a pick and I immediately put a quick 15-minute video out that people can view right away. So maybe first night will be, I don't know. I have to think about this. It's a great question, Ski. And now you have me anxious that I got to figure this out sooner rather than later, but we'll get there. Doug, late again. Hi, Andy. What do you think about the possibility of signing Eddie Jackson? We've had success with former Bear safeties in the past. Hard pass on Eddie Jackson. It's funny. I talked about this on the safety video today. As soon as I watched Adrian Amos when he was signed by the Packers, I went and watched every snap with Chicago the year before that he played and graded every play for Amos. And immediately I said, the Bears are going to realize very quickly that Eddie Jackson was able to do so much of the stuff that he did and was able to play at a high level he did because Adrian Amos was his running mate. I'm like, with Amos gone, they are going to severely miss him. And then they tried replacing Adrian Amos with Clinton Dix, which was hilarious and beautiful all in the same sentence. But I knew it was going to be a struggle. And Eddie Jackson really has not been the same since Adrian Amos left. He is past his prime. There is a lot of late Clinton Dix in Eddie Jackson. Bad angles, bad tackling, lack of playmaking, far too much freelancing, hard pass. Do not think he'd be a fit. You never know when a player might have a late, career resurgence signing with a new team. If they got him on a super cheap deal and wanted to take a flyer on it, fine, it's whatever. But that is by far and away not the direction that I would go in. Excuse me. Ski, not that I know of right now. These are always super fine balancing acts. I've talked about this a little bit. I think maybe it was on the members only episode, but there's always a balancing act, and just kind of I was talking about with like the draft coverage. All right, do I want to do a live draft episode, or do I want to get videos and podcasts out right away so people can, hear what I have to say on like a breakdown of, the different players and things like that. Same thing with the combine. Do I want to go to the combine, but then I don't have, access as much to record the daily videos and stuff? Like there's just a really fine balancing act. And then it all comes down usually to like ROI as well. Me going down to Indianapolis, do I really gain anything additional that I can talk about on the podcast that I can't gain just from watching the combine at home? Maybe, maybe not. And it comes obviously out of my own pocket to go down there and stay and everything like that. And it's just more time away from the family too. So there's a balancing act there. I don't necessarily plan on it, but I would love to get there at some point. I really, really would. Andy, are you like me and hope the Packers will trade up for Cooper? I'll tell you once I watch him in great detail, Tyree. I'll very excited to watch him. I've heard a lot of great things and excited to see what his tape looks like. Your draft day short list is usually spot on. Can we get an early short list of 5 players? Call your shot. Love the show. Not yet, but definitely the week of. I usually put that short list together. And thankfully, outside of the last few years, I think the only one I didn't have was Devontae Wyatt. Quay Walker was on my short list. Jordan Love was on my short list. LVN was on my short list. So yeah, they've been pretty good lately, but we'll get there as we get to closer to the draft. Would you be okay with J-Lo throwing 50 touchdowns and 33 picks? Absolutely not. I don't know if there's like a reference to that somewhere of 50 touchdowns and 33 INTs, but no. I'll take the stat line he had this past year rather than that stat line. Adam, what are we going to do at running back? I would be willing to bet you that they are going to bring back Aaron Jones. They will keep Emmanuel Wilson. And my guess would be that they attack running back very similarly to when they did Jamal Williams in the 3rd round, Aaron Jones in the 5th round, and Devontae Mays in the 7th round. Take a few different guys, hope one of them hits, hope another one hits okay, and stack your running back position that way. And if you could go into training camp with Jones and Emmanuel Wilson and 3 rookies, I think you feel pretty good about the depth of your roster overall at that running back position. I know maybe it's like a 2nd round pick and a 6th round pick and an undrafted free agent, or a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th, or whatever it might be. But I think they attack that aggressively via the draft, bring back Aaron Jones and bring back Emmanuel Wilson. And then outside of Aaron Jones and probably your highest of those picks, who's probably just guaranteed a spot, you let the other 3 kind of, compete for that number 3 running back spot. All right. If Green Bay were to trade into the 10 to 15 range, what do you think they'd be targeting? And don't think it's likely. Goody talked about this week, and I agree with him. Trading up from like 25 to 15 is usually bad business. If you're going after a quarterback or like a really premium player, let's say you had a guy number 5 on your board and he fell to 15, you're probably willing to do it then because it's that premium of a selection. As far as like what they would be targeting, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, right? Maybe their top corner is available and they go to 25 to 15. Safety and off-ball linebacker would not be in that group based on this draft class. They could go edge, but they just spent a top 15 pick on edge last year, and they still have Preston Smith. They still have Rashawn Gary. So there's already a lot of resources there. So moving up to get an edge may not be the best use of resources there. Defensive lineman, maybe, but I'm not sure there's a perfect fit defensive lineman that would fall in that spot that they would actually go and get for what they have on their roster right now and what they'd kind of be looking for. So that doesn't make sense. I don't think they'd move up aggressively for a wide receiver based on the group that they currently have. Same thing for tight end. Don't see a running back, not a quarterback. So it kind of would be, maybe corner or offensive line, and they would just have to absolutely love the player, or just a pass rusher that they thought, was going to be dominant, and they just couldn't pass on it. So corner, pass rusher, offensive lineman would be my guess, and that they just absolutely fell in love with the player. Miranda, thanks for being here. Watched a few episodes I had to catch up on today. Highly recommend. Thanks for the Packer content as always. It's amazing. Super kind of you, Miranda. I'm so glad you liked it. Let's be fair. The line blocked terribly for Dillon, but Jones came back. They were much more in sync. The line is also set up to block more for a Jones type back than a power back. Tyree couldn't disagree with you more. Go watch Aaron Jones in a lot of those games. That was Aaron Jones doing Aaron Jones stuff. Just a very special back. I don't think the run blocking got significantly better at the end of the year. I still think it was a struggle at times, maybe slightly better than it was earlier in the season. It was not the reason that Jones was that much better than Dillon. Dillon is I'm going to get you what's blocked for you. One run over 20 yards, doesn't have the explosivity, doesn't have the broken tackles, struggled massively in short yardage. I will add this. Let's see here. Let's see if I can pull this up really quick here. Who was it that I'm going to try to pull up those statistics really quick on Dillon. Sorry guys, 1 second. I really would love to find this, and I can't remember who posted it. Shoot, who the heck was that? I'm going to see if I'll try to remember it through the course of this episode. It was Warren Sharp. Dillon. Let's see if I can find this. Well, that is frustrating. Sorry, I know this is great content watching me search for stuff on the internet. All right. Oh, crap. I thought I had it. All right, here it is. All right. AJ Dillon had 18 touches inside the 10-yard line last year. He scored just 2 touchdowns. His 11.1% touchdown rate was the worst mark for any running back with over 15 touches inside the 10-yard line in the last 4 years. Additionally, on his 178 rushes this year, he averaged career lows in yards per carry, success rate, first downs per rush, stuff rate, explosive run rate, and yards after contact per rush. Out of 41 running backs with 125 or more rushing attempts last year, he ranked 38 out of 41 in yards per carry, 35 out of 41 in success rate, and 31 out of 41 in EPA per rush. So yeah, it was not great this past year. And I think there's a real opportunity to upgrade that position from a backup standpoint. Any plans for the 2025 draft year yet? Would love for you to get some well-deserved national recognition. Not sure any national recognition is coming, Ski, but I'm hoping to do the week of some drafts, hopefully some live draft shows, some meetups and things like that. And then the really interesting thing is this is, again, where it becomes very complicated. I think it's probably just better for me to do live stuff and do videos right away, kind of from home in my office, rather than actually being down there day of the draft where internet signal is going to be super spotty and I don't get to give coverage to you guys. So it's just sort of this really weird, like, again, the week of, I plan on doing a ton of stuff and hopefully being down there and interacting with a ton of people. But like the actual days of the draft, I actually think it's probably disadvantageous to me to be at the draft, but we'll figure all that stuff out as time goes on. Excited to watch Nubin, Mr. Yuji Vang. Dillon was the next Jamal Williams. In fact, he never lived up to being Jamal Williams, actually. And in fact, that kind of goes, we don't kind of discuss that enough as kind of a bad move for Green Bay. They spent a second round pick on AJ Dillon to replace Jamal Williams. And then Jamal Williams went on to have a much better power back career than AJ Dillon did. And Williams got a very cheap contract. They easily could have just kept Jamal Williams, had the better running back, and still had a second round pick and not had an exorbitant contract to pay Jamal Williams. So that actually ended up being a pretty disappointing series of events for Green Bay, in my opinion. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson would be a great fit in Green Bay. He can hit and bring the aggressiveness we need on that side of the ball. Talked about this in the safety episode today. I don't think he's a perfect fit. He's been injured and his games played have been like 16 games, 12 games, 12 games, 4 games, and it just kind of keeps getting worse. Really banged up. I think he's a little bit overrated overall, but he's an a-hole. He is an absolute, trash talking a-hole that I think you would bring a mentality similar to what PJ Tucker did to the Bucs in their championship run. You need a couple of those guys in your defense. CJ Gardner-Johnson would be that and would not be disappointed if they ultimately went in that direction, just as maybe something a little bit different that they don't have on defense right now. Andy, do you have any interest? Ski, you got a lot of questions today, my friend. Do you have any interest in establishing some sources in around Green Bay? Uglum, Nagler, Bukowski, et cetera, have made reference to their sources before, but doesn't seem like your interest. I don't know. Not really. My interest is analyzing the team and then breaking it down with a fine tooth comb. If anyone, like if I have a source or that happens by happenstance, awesome. But I don't have a ton of interest in like going around and getting scoops and, trading information or things like that. And the truth of the matter is like, there are always going to be people better at that than I am. So like, let them be better at that. And it also like doesn't really get you anywhere anymore. Like, it's great that, somebody breaks that story, and it's very important that Tom Silverstein and Rob Demovsky and those guys like do that sort of work, because otherwise we wouldn't have that information. But like, as soon as somebody tweets it out, everyone else retweets it or tweets it out like 10 seconds after that. It doesn't necessarily actually give you that much of an advantage anymore, other than like Tom Silverstein today, who was able to get an article out about Dillon and Jones into very important pieces of information. And then a lot of people went out and read that. But again, even now we're talking about it, right? So and I can find out about it 10 seconds later after Tom posts about it. So that stuff actually is not of super interest to me. And it doesn't really, I don't know that it all goes down to ROI. I don't think that that's necessarily there. How much dead cap would come with a Aaron Jones release? I can tell you that right now. Aaron Jones release would be, I'm assuming they wouldn't do, actually it doesn't matter either way. 12.35 million in dead cap would be their dead cap hit. However, the nice thing is this isn't necessarily the nice thing. You do save money. So you would save 4.6 million overall in cap savings. So there is a benefit there. But the nice thing is if you do get off of that deal, right now he is set to count 6.6 million against the cap next year when he's not even on the team, if they were to play out his roster spot right now or his contract as is. And if they did that now, they would have no dead money next year with him not on the team. So you not only save money this year by doing it, but you save money next year by doing it as well. So there is some benefit of doing that. But like I said, my guess is they ultimately get to a restructure. Are any of the free agent running backs a realistic option? For example, I'd love Jacobs in Green Bay because I could see my name on their Green Bay roster in Madden. Well done, Josh Jacobs. Yeah, I have another episode planned coming out about some potential free agent running backs. I do think it's within the realm of possibility. Listen, they were just trying to acquire Jonathan Taylor last year. I legitimately believe they were aggressively trying to do so. They have free agent money to spend. And I think they recognize, just like we did, how important Aaron Jones was to that team when he was healthy. And you need that, another guy like that, where if Jones goes down for 6, 7, 8 weeks again, you have somebody who can step in and bring the same thing. So I do think it's legitimately possible that they could go free agent shopping and add somebody like a Saquon Barkley if they wanted to do that, or a DeAndre Swift, maybe a Josh Jacobs, and have somebody that they can kind of complement each other. And maybe both of them don't have to necessarily play 25 snaps a game. They can both, get 15 touches, but both of those, all those 15 touches from both of them are dynamic. And I think that would, that would be a potential really nice place to be in if they decided to go in that direction. Would it not be worth it to sign Love before Dak's contract? The issue here is for Jordan Love, he can't sign his next contract up until a year after he signed his last one. So I think that brings you to May or something. So they're going to have to wait for a little bit before they can actually get that deal done anyway. Let me hold on saying this. I have done a very, very deep dive into Caleb Williams. I have not watched Drake May or any of the other quarterback prospects yet. But based on my eval of Caleb Williams, he is immensely talented. I absolutely would take him number 1 overall. I am very much hoping that the Chicago Bears find a way to screw this up, but extremely, extremely, extremely high on Caleb Williams. I watched every all 22 snap of him besides his last 2 games, and I'd actually still like to watch those this past season. Incredibly, incredibly high on Caleb Williams, and very much hoping that the Bears do not end up with him. For the Packers free agents that won't be re-signed, are there any teams that you would think that they would be a good fit with? Oh man, there's a lot of free agents to go through. I think the nice thing is that Green Bay's been pretty versatile. Keyshawn Nixon can fit as a kick returner and a gadget player, special teams player, and slot corner with pretty much any team in the NFL. AJ Dillon, could fill in for a team that wants maybe, I think actually even more of a power running team than what Green Bay has been. So I think you could actually find a better fit elsewhere. John Runyon Jr. could fit pretty much anywhere and has left guard and right guard versatility, and also has backed up at center a little bit. Yosh Nijman can play left tackle, right tackle. I think he'd fit more with a zone blocking scheme and finesse style team that needs a pass blocking, probably swing tackle or maybe a fringe starter at that position. So it just depends. And we'd have to kind of go through everyone in very firm detail. But I think the nice thing is a lot of those guys are versatile. Guys, just for the record, I'm just trying to go through in order right now, but I will make sure to get to all super chats before we end up here. Probably got about 20 minutes left. Why do I hate you? Ross, Dejean video is just going to add to the heartbreak when we take LB8 at 25 instead. Jokes aside, great video from Ross. Yeah, Ross is absolutely killing it. Guys, if you are not watching those daily draft videos, you are really missing out. A great 20-minute, it's just really in and out, super to the point breakdown of some of the prospects that Green Bay is expected to target. Ross is super, super targeted with these breakdowns. He's not just doing anyone willy-nilly. He is focusing on players that Green Bay is likely to take in the draft. So, and Ross is very, very good. And that they do the entire Green Bay draft guide that is dedicated to players that Green Bay is likely to pick. They crushed it last year. So this is targeted on players that Green Bay is likely to select. They are doing the heavy lifting for you. And Ross is bringing you an amazing episode every single weekday. And starting next week, after this weekend, this Saturday and Sunday are the last 2 days it'll be off. From starting on Monday, he is going every day between now and probably a little bit after the draft. So make sure to subscribe and check that out. Is Jordan Love extension all going towards the next year's salary cap? Just depends how they structure it. I think there's a decent chance that it could start next year, but they could also start it this year. And I think that's all going to be part of the negotiation. I would love to see his cap number this year stay right around the same as it is right now. I think that's within the realm of possibility, but that just means you pay him more later. If you pay him more now, you pay him less later. Just all the very fun cap gymnastics that comes with that stuff. If Joe Barry was pineapple on pizza, what pizza topping is Jeff Hafley? Let's see. I think Jeff Hafley is going to be very versatile. But he's a little bit of an unknown. We don't know exactly what we're going to get. He's coming from more of an amateur background. So it's kind of like an amateur, versatile, unknown topping. What would be an amateur, versatile, unknown topping? That's like bacon bits or maybe like little, that's not an unknown though. What do I want to go with here? I'm going to say he is chicken. He's chicken as a pizza topping, which, right now it's a little bit of an unknown depending on what pizza it's being put on. It's versatile because you can use it with a variety of different pizzas. And, I don't know that it's necessarily amateur, but depending on where you get the chicken from, it can be really good chicken or amateur chicken. So I'm going to say he's chicken, which, like I said, can be very versatile if used in the right way. Can be used on a barbecue chicken pizza, which is great, a chicken Alfredo pizza. You can use it very well. And if it's done really well, it can work perfectly. But if it doesn't go right, it could also be like if it's just on a normal pizza, it's just like, what are we doing here? I'm going to say right now he's chicken as a topping. Still better than pineapple. If Aaron Jones were to be released, what do you think his chances? What do you think the chances are of re-signing him? We kind of went through this a little bit, but my ultimate belief is that he's back with the team. If they do end up releasing him, they will continue to work together. And basically they'll say, go find the best deal you can and come back to us and we'll try our best to match it. And if we can't, we'll say best of luck in your future endeavors. But I really, truly believe that Aaron Jones will be back in Green Bay this upcoming season. I don't think either side has real legitimate aspirations to go in a different direction. And because of that, I think it ultimately gets done in some capacity. All right, kind of a dumb question. What can the shareholders actually do? Example, stop the team from changing uniforms. Absolutely nothing. Like not fake shareholders, but not the ones that just have the certificate. Real shareholders, I think, can appoint like people to the board of directors, and the board of directors can actually make decisions and decide on some things. But outside, I mean, they have very specific people on the board that do very specific things. Shareholders select the board. The board has, committees and people who run the different sort of aspects of it. And then obviously Mark Murphy oversees everything. So that's kind of the general answer there. Can you get Zach Cruz on the video podcast so we can confirm that he's real? I think I've had Zach on a podcast once. I think it was an audio podcast, not a video podcast, but I can confirm Zach is real. I've talked to him on a podcast. I have seen him in person, credentialed in Green Bay. So he is real. I would absolutely love to talk to him more. I was hoping to do a little bit more with him this past season. He is a super busy individual. And so unfortunately, it just doesn't work out a lot of times, but Zach does incredible, incredible work. One of my favorite people that covers the Packers, bar none. And I can confirm that he is in fact real, like Zane Anderson. Buffalo was in cap hell before this cap increase and still hurting. Yeah, a lot of teams were like that. And some teams are still like that. The Saints are in no man's land. Doug, appreciate you. And yes, everyone make sure to hit like, comment, subscribe, become a Pack a Day Podcast YouTube member, do all those amazing things. You just wait. Thank you for the super chat. Are the Packers really more rigid on position size plus testing reps than any other team? Would love to see a comparative study of the Packers versus NFL trends. All you have to do, you just wait, is look at the relative athletic scores of the Packers every single year, and you will see that they are looking for high-end athletes with specific size, weight, speed ratios. They are willing to go outside of that from time to time. There's no question about it. It's not a strict, hard and fast rule. When they have gone outside of it, players like Amari Rodgers and Jay Sternberger hasn't necessarily worked out the best. The Colts and the Packers have a very similar philosophy. And they're not necessarily alone in this, but they're very analytically driven when it comes to sort of narrowing down the pool of players that they want for the draft. Again, there's always willing to be exceptions for this, but if you look at it from a pure analytical approach, if you're just taking swings and misses with draft picks, the numbers will tell you high-end athletes are far more likely to succeed than athletes that are average or below average athletes. It's pretty simple. Always exceptions to the rule, but let's say you take 15 poor athletes in a draft and 15 great athletes in the draft. Percentage-wise, you are going to hit far more often on the 15 great athletes than you are going to hit on the 15 terrible athletes or bad or average athletes, just from a pure numbers standpoint. So like teams like Indianapolis and Green Bay, what they do is they try to hone in on that super athlete pool of players, but then both the Colts and the Packers, it's not like this is just Moneyball, where they're just saying we're going to take high-end athletes based on what the testing tells us and screw the scouting. This is analytics plus scouting. The Colts and the Packers have high-end scouting backgrounds. Brian Gutekunst spent his entire career as a scout. They've got their full scouting staff. They've got a ton that goes into this from the scouting side of things that they are not just going to ignore. And their hope is they can narrow that pool of players down by looking at the high-end athletes, but then using their scouting prowess, they can take the list of super athletes and say, hey, we don't think these guys are going to work out, but we think these guys are. And now you've got this super targeted list of high-end athletes that you've put through a funnel of your actual scouting process to come to a group of players that you think are the best of both worlds, that analytically can work out incredibly well, but from a scouting standpoint can work out incredibly well as well. And your hope is that you end up with draft classes like this past year, great athletes, great football people that have been put through the scouting ringer. And now you end up with these really great players. Doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes guys that sucked from a testing standpoint end up being amazing. And sometimes if you limit yourself to a certain height or weight or speed, you can miss out on some really good players. But from an analytical side of things, with the scouting side of things, they're trying to get the best of both worlds. And overall, I like the way that they attack the draft. Jones won't be released this year. I agree with that in general. But again, I very much understand Tom Silverstein's reporting. I do think that, like I said, if you go to a player with a pay cut, you have to be willing to release them if they say no. And that's going to be something that Jones and the Packers are going to have to work through. But as we've been saying all podcast long, I do expect him to be back. Do you see Goot being any more aggressive in the draft with all the draft trade capital we have? I do think he has the ability to be, what do I want to say? Like, I think he has maneuverability and flexibility. And I don't expect him to move up 10 spots in the first round or anything like that. Could he move up 3 to 4 spots? Yeah, absolutely. We've seen him do that in the past. He did that with Jordan Love. And, he'll probably do that again at some point. So I think he has the ability to move up. Maybe he moves up 4 spots in the first round. And then like he did last year, we moved down in the second round twice, picked up bonus picks and got Carl Brooks and Dontavian Wicks with those extra picks, and then still got Jaden Reed in the second round. I could see him move up in the first and then down in the second and basically come out even. I think he's just going to do a lot of maneuvering to get to the spots that he thinks are best. And usually when he's able to do that, good things ultimately happen. We need to talk more about Frankie Louvu as a free agent target. I love Frankie Louvu. Really excited to break down some tape of him. And I've been a big fan of his game for a really long time, and also think he'd be a very good fit next to Quay Walker. What do you foresee the Packers doing with the nickel? Work for the Chiefs drafting one. Think we go that route or free agency with Nixon a pending unrestricted free agent. Yeah, they definitely have to attack that nickel position with a little bit more purpose. We are past the time where, we found a diamond in the rough in Shannon Sullivan, and let's use this journeyman Keyshawn Nixon. This is a legitimate big time position in the NFL, and you have to treat it as such. And I'm hoping Green Bay goes a little bit more aggressive in trying to address that position moving forward. Live draft party equals money. You're probably right. That probably is the best way to go. We'll figure it out. I promise you, no matter what, there's going to be great content. There's a possibility where I do a live draft show with like me and one other person. Packers make their selection. I do a quick recap in person, then pop off the video for 15 minutes, record the other video, let the other person continue for 15 minutes, and then hop right back on. There's a variety of different ways we could do this, but I promise you it's going to be great. Andre, welcome from Brazil. Do you know how many people are in the Packers scouting staff? I can tell you, I think. All right. Team, front office. All right. Scout. So you've got Luke Banuska, who's a college scout, Venzel Boulware, who's a pro scout, Quandon Christian, a pro scout, Chris Gaines, a college scout, Joe Huber, a college scout, Sean Linton, a college scout, Matt Malaspina, director of college scouting, Danny Mock, college scouting coordinator, Patrick Moore, assistant director of college scouting, Mike Owen, college scout, Sam Seal, national scout, John Eric Sullivan, vice president of player personnel. It's kind of in that realm. Brett Thiessen, college scout, Richmond Williams, director of pro personnel, Derek Whipple, scouting assistant. And then of course you've got guys like John Wachakowski, who's director of player personnel, Milt Hendrickson, who's director of football operations, Brian Gutekunst, general manager, and stuff like that. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 people have the official term of scout in their title in some capacity for the Packers. Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Excited to have everything set up. So hopefully the mic is sounding good to everyone. Marcus May is getting a little bit further down in his career. He's also had some off the field stuff with some DUIs. Don't necessarily expect the Packers to go in that direction, but with him being released, it is at least somebody to keep a little bit of an eye on. Off topic, but 2025 NFL draft, do you have any info on Green Bay hosting? Most importantly, where will the player area waiting be? I have not seen anything yet, Nathaniel. I know that the Packers have booked like everything around the stadium and will have every option at their disposal. And they're just going to have to kind of figure that out as time goes on. Hot take, we should re-sign Rudy Ford. He played like a plus safety before injured. Could be a safety 2 or 3 for cheap. I will say this. He basically went to the back of the line when he got back from injury. He was behind basically everyone at that point. I wouldn't hate it, but this needs to be a vet minimum deal, and he needs to earn his job in training camp is the way I would put that. If you want to sign him to like $100,000 or $200,000 signing bonus on a vet minimum deal, and if he doesn't make it out of training camp, he still gets the bonus. It's fine. No harm, no foul. But if you do bring him back, he should be a player that has to earn his job in training camp, in my opinion. I want Green Bay to trade back to get more picks in the 40 to 80 range. You just have to be careful with that. I don't necessarily hate it, but your goal is to get premium players. That is the goal of the draft. Find a way to get one all pro caliber player, one really good starter, and a couple, starters / role players, and you have a really good draft. And a lot of times, the earlier you pick in the draft, the more opportunity there is to get that premium player. It's not a perfect science. You can always get them later. Look at Puka Nacua last year, but your goal is to get premium players. And sometimes you have to be careful. And I've kind of, as I've gone through this and done it over the years, you have to be careful where you think sometimes you can get, a lot more if you with more picks, and having more bites at the apple can be a good thing, but you also don't want to sacrifice quality either. And a lot of times some really quality players early in the draft, and you do want to take those swings at potential premium players when you can get them. Will they be moving the combine to be in different cities starting next year? I have to go and look at that, Michael. I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know they were looking at that for some time. I think trade out of round 1 could be good. Like the thought of 3 2s and 3 3s. Again, within the realm of possibility, but you just have to be careful that you don't let the draft pass you by where you miss out on some of the premium talent. But this is why you put together a board. If you feel like the first round is 20 players deep, and then players 21 through 51 are all about the same, well, then if you can't get one of those players 1 through 20, then you move back and you try to acquire more picks in that 21 through 51 range. And you could potentially do that where you move back your first round pick, but move up your third round picks, and you get a bunch of picks 21 through 51. It just all really depends on how your board is stacked and how Green Bay ultimately views the draft. All right, if the Packers were to trade up, which pick in the top 2 rounds would you think they trade, into what spot? I would think that they try to maybe get their thirds up into the second, or maybe just up higher. I think the more like top 50 guys that you can get is probably where you really want to be. Now, they could easily get to the third round and still have a lot of top 50 guys on their specific board and maybe don't need to move up. But I would expect that Green Bay wants to get guys in the top 50. So I think those third round picks, potentially getting those up a little bit, could be where they want to attack this draft. Nitty gritty, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. Probably a few more questions here. Max Melton looked good today. I'm excited to watch him on tape. Thanks, Andy, for sharing your thoughts. Even when we disagree, I appreciate the discourse. Right back at you, Tyree. One of Halfley's guys, Elijah Jones, cornerback from Boston College, absolutely showed out today. So did Sen Ristel from Michigan. Good guys for the slot. Could be very good options there. Let's go Packers. 200 plus watching, only 33 likes. Come on, boys. Hit that like button, guys. All right. Aaron Jones is staying. Agreed. Carter Johnson, I would very much vehemently disagree that he sucks, but he has had a lot of injury issues. I do think he's a little bit overrated, but he does bring a really fun mentality to your defense. I'm in favor for drafting offensive line in the first round above some of the defensive prospects, O-line prospects like Powers Johnson or Barton. What say you? Enjoy the show, by the way. Thank you so much. I want more offensive line. I've said it. You are at the point where you've got a potentially great quarterback. Just protect that dude. They have all the weapons that they need. They could use another running back. We know that. They have every weapon that they need to be super successful. They got the quarterback they need to be super successful. This is an offense that has the ability to be a 30+ point per game performer on a consistent basis if you protect Jordan Love. You don't want a situation where he has to drop his eyes because he has to constantly watch the pass rush. You're potentially losing guys like Nyman and John Runyon Jr. and David Bakhtiari. That depth is going to take a hit. Build that up, gain more competition, get better, make your running game better, make your play action game better. The offensive line is a huge key to this, and keep building that as much as possible. Bobby, I like baseball, but it's not on the top of my list. I love going to Brewer games. I love Brewer games being on in the background as I'm watching draft stuff or whatever it might be. So yes, enjoy it. But like I said, love going to games. Was at the playoff game last year in Milwaukee. So yeah, really enjoy it, but it's not. I like college basketball better. I love NFL a lot better. I love NBA a lot better, but definitely do love my Milwaukee Brewers. That is for sure. We talked about that. And I love the Milwaukee Bucks. Absolutely. Was at game 6 of the NBA Finals when they won it. So glad I was there. One of my all-time favorite moments. So yes, very, very big Milwaukee Bucks fans. Valentine and Johnson would be chirping every play. Yes, they very much would. And Jair would be involved in that as well. Jordan Love going to finish his career with the Packers. We will have to wait and see. We'll probably get the same situation. Hall of Famer, Super Bowl, ugly divorce at the end, ends up a New York Jet. So we can just wait on that for about a decade yet. Oh, Austin, great question. My thoughts, I posted this on Twitter if you really want to see. Thoughts on that idiot who asked Caleb Williams the first question. That idiot who asked Caleb Williams the first question is a complete and total douche. And the reason that is, and let me start by saying this. It's possible he had a bad day and a bad question. I've had bad questions to Matt LaFleur, one of which went viral. It went viral because it was a stupid question. It didn't go viral because it was a mean-spirited or douchebag question. I just asked it in the wrong way. And I will be the first to admit to you, it is not an overall strength of what I do. I think I've gotten better at it, at asking questions in media sessions and things like that. But it's not like, if we're putting my Madden sliders on what I'm best at, we're not maxing out my Madden sliders on interview questions. I've had my share of questions that didn't go the way that I expected them to. So maybe he had a bad day. But the issue is, even when I've had a bad day or asked the wrong question, it was never a douchey question. It was never mean-spirited. It was never anything remotely close to that. And the issue that you have when somebody like that asks a douchebaggy question is, he's somebody with, I think a fantasy background with maybe 7,000 followers on Twitter that probably is credentialed for the first time. And what teams do and what the NFL does and what media, what all these PR groups do is they look at stuff like that and they say, we are going to limit credentialing further. And we're not going to make it so guys like that can get that. And in Green Bay, for the Packers, they do not credential blogs. They do not credential podcasts. They do not credential Cheesehead TV. They don't credential the Pack-A-Day podcast. Should Cheesehead TV be credentialed? Hell yes, it should. Should the Pack-A-Day podcast be credentialed? Hell yes, it should. But it's douchebag questions like this that give podcasters and bloggers and other fantasy sports professionals who are actually good at their job a bad name, and then teams and media outlets and PR groups and professional NFL stuff and NBA, they don't want to go out and credential those sort of media members, even though there are a lot of people like myself who can go out and do it at a professional level. I have to go get my credential a different way because I can't get it through Packer Report because they're afraid of exactly this sort of situation happening where you end up with press conferences where Matt LaFleur is trying to be a professional at the podium and you got douchebags like this asking douchebag questions. And then now next year, guess what? The combine probably going to be much more strict with combine stuff. So it sucks. It's stupid. And hopefully they don't overreact to one idiot being a freaking idiot. No dead cap for AJ Dillon because he's a free agent. All right. Henry Jones, 1-2 punch. Don't really see that happening. Hi, Andy. Happy Friday. And thank you again for what you do. Would you prefer one splash big name signing or a few mid-level? I'm for one big signing playmaker and rest through the draft. I would always take one big signing over a smorgasbord of smaller signings. I always think you're better to get the premium player. But it just depends. There are a variety of different ways to go about doing it. And I do think, like we talked about, like Jordan Fuller and Justin Blackmon and those guys, I think are really sound safety signings that aren't going to break the bank. If you wanted to do two guys like that and a Frankie Louvu and maybe like a nice swing tackle signing, that could be really, really good. And it's not any one premium signing, but you added a lot of talent to your roster at some positions of need. So there, like I said, there's no perfect 101, formula for building out a roster, but yeah, that's probably the way I would go, is the premium position signing. No, Devontae Adams is not going to the Packers. He will be in the Packer Hall of Fame someday, but he will not be a Green Bay Packer this year. Don't have a question for you today, but I just wanted to say that I'm glad Ross is back on the show for a bit, and I've been loving the daily draft episodes. So happy to hear that, Dillon, and thanks so much for the feedback. I will share that with him as well. I've been watching all the Ross videos. They are great. Okay, what did I miss? I was on a beer run. You missed a lot, Matt. I can't click it for some reason. There we go. DJ Reader needed to sign with the Packers. I think they could probably add to their defensive line depth via the draft, if anything. I don't think they need an expensive or even a smaller free agent defensive line signing at this point. Halfley is barbecue beef. Let's go Packers. Definitely the offseason if we're talking pizza toppings. I would say onion. His defense is supposed to play angry. Onion is my favorite pizza topping, by the way. That's going to surprise a lot of people. I love onions on my pizza. Absolute favorite. Don't like chicken on pizza. Pepperoni is fine. I think Halfley will be full power flavor of pepperoni. Gut feeling, what position do we draft first round as of today? Offensive line or corner would be my guess. First round cornerback or falling offensive tackle for a trade back. Come on, Andy. Halfley would have to be cheese, extra cheese. We'll say extra cheese. That we could do that. Extra cheese is a great topping. Seems they are that way on their first and second rounders, especially Braylon Allen incoming. Goody did say he wants a power back, so that could be within the realm of possibility. What would you trade for Rasul Douglas? I just don't think I would do it at that point. If he becomes available via release, I would be very, very interested, but I'm not going to trade back for the player that I just traded away. I'd probably just go in a different direction at that point. Joe Barry was not pineapple. He was more like anchovies or something very few people like. Could see that. Just seeing some speculative reports that the Packers may release Aaron Jones. Any thoughts given the cap hit? We went through this today, Nate, but yes, a legitimate report from Tom Silverstein. I do think it always has to be within the realm of possibility if you're going to go to a player with a restructure, but I do expect Aaron Jones back in 2024. I don't have a take on this at this point, Tiago. No way they're releasing Jones. I tend to agree with this as well. Jones is a straw that stirs the drink. I think Buddha could be a trade target, and does he fit? I think he would be more of a target if the Cardinals ultimately released him. I don't know that they would actually give up, premium draft capital for him, maybe a late round pick. I do think he could be a fit, but there have been some pretty significant signs of decline with Baker as well. I wouldn't mind it. I also think he might be a better fit for a 2 safety look. But he would be a really interesting, candidate via late round pick trade or player swap, or certainly if they could get him in, after being released, wouldn't hate it. But I think there's probably options out there that might fit just a little bit better. Hoping DeJean is there for us, can go between his legs and dunk a basketball. I'm all there for that. What do you think a contract for someone like Jacobs, Barkley, or Taylor would be on the open market? I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. It just depends on how teams value them. But I will say, Sean, we're about to find out this offseason. If Williams falls to 25th, we're picking him up, right? Best player on the board. I'm assuming you mean Caleb Williams. If Caleb Williams fell to 25, here's what you know. If Caleb Williams fell to 25, he had some sort of gas mask incident a la Laramie Tunsil, or he has a serious injury that's going to threaten his career, or he's got something that happened that made him fall to 25. What I always say in these hypothetical situations, if he fell 1 through 24, the Packers, I know and can look you in the eye, are not going to be the team that stops him from that slide. If there are red flags that every other team is unwilling to spend a first round pick on him, the Green Bay Packers will be more than any other team unlikely to spend a first round pick on him. So the only reason he falls to 25 is because a major red flag happened. And if that's the reason, Green Bay will pass on him as well. So he will not be drafted by the Packers at pick 25, either because there are no red flags, or it's such a big red flag that he fell to 25, which means he's also going to fall to pick 26. In the picture, the way that Bart's pants, leg, and sock come together makes it look like he has a G on his leg just below his knee. I don't know. I don't see it. Does anyone else see a G below the knee on his legs? Are we talking like here? I don't know. I don't see a G. I don't see it. Drazon Newton, just thought I'd say it. Man, he ripped through the Badgers last year. He's a player that I'm really excited to take a deep dive into. Do you think the Packers draft Allen, running back from Wisconsin? I mean, probably not. 1 in 32 chance, right? But Goody did say they want a power back. They do like high-end athletes, so that could potentially be a fit. Just joined. Are we noticing Max Melton's combine? Yeah, a couple people have noticed it. We'll get to prospects in the next coming weeks. Let's see. Glad the window is open for the Packers, but let's all temper expectations for this year and look to 2025 as our next opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. Man, for anyone that has been following me for any period of time, you will know that 2025 was the year that I pointed to. The expectations have changed after last year. They could have been they should have been in the NFC Championship last year based on their game against San Fran. They should have probably beat the Lions. They should have probably been in the Super Bowl. Listen, the goalposts have changed. They've moved. They're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. and expectations have adjusted accordingly. You can go back and find it on Twitter. It is everywhere and everyone's dunking on the guy. So it's very easy to find. Yes, if Caleb was afraid of competition, yeah, because he didn't want to do drills at the combine. Well said. Idiot is right. What a rant. Now I need to see what was asked. We have reached peak douchebag. Well, there's always somebody that will reach new heights, I promise. Funny thing is that blogger can parlay this into some growth for their bad channel. Hopefully not. We do live in a dumb timeline. Wait, what is going on with Aaron Jones? The report from Tom Silverstein is that they are trying to restructure his deal. And if they can't come to a restructure, they will release him and then try to come to a deal on the open market, with Jones having the ability to talk to other teams and Green Bay hoping that they're still going to beat out any other team that's willing to give him a contract on the open market. I still, like we said, all through this episode or all through this live chat, I expect him to be back in 2024. Onions are top. Andy and the food takes. I love onions, man. Onions on pizza are amazing. I disagree with this. I wish this was viewed differently. I do think there's bad PR. I do think there's bad exposure. Saw 4 to 5 cornerbacks today at the combine that I'd be happy with. Yeah, it does look like a very, very good corner class. That's a good question, Kevin. I'd have to look. I mean, obviously, it's got to be soon, I would think. So hopefully we get that news sooner rather than later. I'd give Caleb Williams partial ownership. He can have one share just like me. I like that. It really helps when my ear cuts off just a part of the picture. I don't know where you guys are seeing the G. Let's see. So I think 12 was actually a recruiter. I don't think so. No, I think there was probably a time where Green Bay maybe tried for him to be a recruiter. And I don't know, but there was never really anyone, in my opinion. Maybe, I don't know. There were certainly players, I'm sure, like Julius Peppers was wanting to come to Green Bay because Rodgers was here, but I don't know that Rodgers actually recruited Peppers either. But it would seem like no. Do you think the Packers would do contract extension with Kenny Clark? I think it's within the realm of possibility. Absolutely. I think they could do a restructure, an extension. I would expect them to do a little bit of something on that deal in some capacity. Just showed Goody at the combine, looks locked in on those safeties. Not a surprise there. I've not watched Peyton Watson yet. Saw Colin Cowherd say that the Packers should not extend Jordan Love right now and wait till next year. We don't really talk about Colin Cowherd because he's another one of those that just likes to yell loud things, but this is him yelling a loud thing. It's a stupid take. Listen, Devin White's one of those players. I want to go back and I'm excited for the linebacker episode coming next week because I really want to watch Devin White. Devin White had some really bad years. Like I know like 2021 and 2022, if I remember correctly, were pretty bad years for Devin White. Let me see. PFF's not everything, but I want to see what he graded by PFF because I know I watched some of those games and it was not pretty. And he got benched at one point too. These are Devin White's PFF grades, by the way. From 2019, 51.9, 48.1, 35.1, 43.7, 47.4. It's as bad as it gets. Again, PFF's not everything, but I watched some of those Devin White games and they were not good. So that is not a player that is on the top of my list, but I am very excited to go out and watch him. But for a very good defense that fit his skill set perfectly in a Todd Bowles scheme that was fantastic, he did not perform well. I would not necessarily be super excited about that pickup, especially if it was for an exorbitant signing. Forgot to ask if big name running backs do come available. Which one do you think would fit well next to Jones? I do think Saquon fits eerily well. I think both of them would be able to get, again, like 15 to 18, touches a game potentially, and, probably more like 15. And I think both of them would stay fresh. I think neither of them can really handle like a 25 touch workload. One of them's almost always going to be hurt. The other hopefully is active. I think that would be a potential really fun fit next to each other, but I don't necessarily see it happening. Man, I'm going to have to look at this closer. Wide receiver crush is Keon Coleman. I can understand that. Peyton Wilson is 1A and 1B with Edgerrin. If he wasn't injured, for sure, first rounder. Who do you like at outside linebacker that can cover? Haven't watched Peyton Wilson. Like I said at the onset, guys, we'll get there with the draft prospects. Do not think Royce Newman makes it to training camp. I think he will be cut, probably sometime before camp would be my guess. Team fits for AJ Dillon. I'd have to look at like some of the offenses with the new offensive coordinators and teams and stuff, but power running game is probably what's going to fit him best. We're probably going to end it here. If you were GM of the Vikings, how do you handle the quarterback situation? I think their cap situation with the incoming JJ extension is sneaky tough. Yeah, they're not in a great spot overall. This is why I've said, like, I actually think the Bears, even though going into last year, I know everyone was expecting the Vikings to be better. I've said for a while, I think I think I was reading the thing here of Dillon to the Vikings, but I think the Vikings are in a much worse spot than the Bears are in right now. I think the Vikings are going to be fourth in the division for a while, would be my guess. But Justin Jefferson, super talented. They need to figure out quarterback. And until they do that, I don't think the Vikings should really be of any concern to anyone for the near future. Even if they bring back Cousins and are like good, they're like the exact good that you want them to be. They're like 9-8 good, maybe a little bit of a pain in the ass when you play them. Certainly could beat you any given Sunday, but you have no stress of them actually winning a Super Bowl or being like this ultra competitive team. That's kind of exactly where you want them. 8-9, 9-8, maybe a little pesky in the game, but never actually threatening to make any legitimate run. You guys are the absolute best. Thank you so much for being here. I got to head out. I think we got to almost every single question today, which I think is the first time I ever did this for a happy hour. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit up those Pack a Day Podcast YouTube memberships. I will see you guys soon, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.